guys, and welcome to another one of my reviews over here at the Bimmer Guy. Today we're talking about a controversial model from BMW, and as you probably figured it out already, it's the BMW X2. Now the X2 was launched because BMW is trying to cover every possible niche out there, and they're trying to offer an SUV or crossover counterpart for every single car in their original range. So today we're dealing with the X1, X2, X3, X4, X5, X6, and we'll have the X7 in the near future. What's the BMW X2? Well, the BMW X2, as the name suggests, is, and as the tradition suggests, is the coupe version of the X1, just like the X4 is the coupe version of the X3, just like the X6 is the coupe version of the X5. So basically it's supposed to be a sportier, more aggressive looking, maybe better to drive car than the X1. The thing is, it looks absolutely nothing like the X1, like it's the case with the other two brethren in the range, the X3 and the X4 and the X5 and the X6. If you took an X4 and an X3 and positioned them next to each other and looked at them from the front, you'd see that just up to the B pillar they're basically the same. It's not the case with the X1 and the X2. The X2 comes with a completely new look, and to be honest, it looks great. That's in my view. Of course, looks will always be subjective, but to my taste, the X2 looks great. It is a lot more aggressive than the X1, and deservedly so. Up front, you'll notice that the kidney grills have been reversed. They have been turned upside down so that the longer base is now closer to the road. It basically looks like the car is sniffing the asphalt all the time, and I sincerely like that. I like the headlights too, which are slimmer and more aggressive. They have a different corona ring inside, and the bumper looks different as well. Now the car I'm testing today is the M Sport X model, and it's wearing galvanic gold, which is the color BMW developed specifically for the X2 when it was launched. It also comes as the difference between the M Sport and the M Sport X in terms of visuals. The M Sport X comes with a couple of gray accents here and there that you can notice in my video, so that sets it apart from the M Sport model. The idea behind the three lines that BMW has for the X2, the Sport, M Sport and M Sport X models, is to differentiate them enough so that people can choose the right one for them. The Sport model will be the comfiest of the three, then comes the M Sport, and then the M Sport X. Both the M Sport and the M Sport X use the M Sport suspension, which is kind of on the stiffer side of things. That can be annoying around town if you're driving over less than perfect surfaces, because it is stiffer than you'd expect. At least it was in my case. I didn't expect the X2 to ride so harsh. The extra stiff seats don't really help out either, because the M Sport and M Sport models, M Sport X models, come with these M Sport seats, which are a bit on the harsh side of things. They look great, however, they come dressed in Alcantara as standard, and if you want to, you can get contrast stitching just like this car has, in the same color as the exterior. So you'll notice that on the dash, the seats and the center console, I have contrast stitching in galvanic gold, which looks great in my opinion. But the thing is, over time, these lines, these contrast stitches will get dirty, and they will be a lot less noticeable. But that's something to worry about later. From the side, the X2 looks like a more aggressive X1 as well. One thing I did notice is that the windows are narrower, and that can cut into visibility. But speaking of which, the visibility of the X3 from inside the X2 to the outside isn't all that bad. I mean, yeah, the rear window is smaller than on the X1, but it does a good job, and you can get a rear view camera, which is not mounted all that high as we're used to on other SUVs. It's mounted just above the license plate number and doesn't offer a great view out the back, but it's decent. At least you can see what's happening in the back. You'll also notice while looking at the car from the sides that it has two BMW badges on the C-pillars. That's a throwback to the 3.0 CSL, the original BMW motorsport car. And even though the two don't share the same DNA, I mean, this is built on the UKL platform, so it's a front-wheel drive car. They do share the same bloodline to some point. So yeah, BMW wanted to emphasize the fact that this is supposed to be a coupe. What I find really interesting about that is that usually in every coupe BMW makes, from the 2 Series to the 4 Series Grand Coupe to the X6, you don't get these. On any modern coupe from BMW, you don't get these, the handles that you can use to grab for your life, you know, in case something goes wrong. But on the X2 they decided to install them. Why? I don't know. Maybe BMW is finally figuring out that people don't like the fact that they don't have handles inside. I don't know. I, for one, don't like the fact that when I'm riding in a BMW X6 or a 4 Series, I don't have a handle to use. Moving on, inside the cabin, you'll notice a couple of differences compared to the X1 as well. The center console is deeper than on the X1. It has a sort of I don't know, border on the sides. Then there's the dash that has a protuberance right here, housing the HVAC controls and the multimedia controls. It looks great. I don't mind it at all. It doesn't cut into space and actually gives the interior a bit of, I don't know, a different approach compared to other models in the range. The M Sport steering wheel is still here, and this is still the best steering wheel in the business if you ask me. It's absolutely brilliant to use. It's great in terms of size and girth, and I simply love it. I like it even more than the new M Sport steering wheel on the 5 Series and 7 Series and newer models from BMW. The instrument cluster is taken straight off the BMW 2 Series, because after all, the X2 is supposed to be a crossover alternative to the 2 Series. It uses the same design as the facelifted 2 Series with white dials, white needles, and a small digital bit in the lower right side. And it looks good, it looks sporty, it looks different from the X1, which is something I like. You have the iDrive5.0 system on the dash with the touchscreen now available for the X2 as well. I still prefer to use the iDrive now because it's easier, more intuitive than trying to hit a tile on the screen while driving on bumpy roads. That's going to prove to be, I don't know, maybe nearly impossible. So let's talk about how the car drives. You can get it with xDrive or sDrive on a variety of models. At launch, BMW is only offering 2-liter engines, 2-liter 4-cylinder engines. The one I'm driving is the top diesel choice you can get at the moment. It's the 25d model xDrive. So it's all-wheel drive, but the all-wheel drive system is the one used for UKL-based models, which means it is front-wheel drive bias. It's not the same xDrive system that you get on a 3 Series, for example. Which means that only the front wheels are powered 90% of the time. Power gets sent to the rear wheels whenever that is needed. It uses a trick differential that senses when there is a lack of traction up front and sends some of the power to the back. It's a decent system. I tested it on the Mini Countryman in off-road and in snow. It won't let you down, but just know that it's not as fun to drive as a typical rear-wheel drive biased xDrive system. The 2-liter diesel engine under the hood of this car has 230 horsepower and 450 Nm of torque. It is punchy, has a lot of torque from down low, from 1200 RPM, and it is mated to an Aisin-sourced 8-speed automatic gearbox. It's not the ECF gearbox we've all grown used to. and it does a good job. The Asian sourced gearbox does a good job. The thing is, it's not as refined and as fast to respond as the ZF gearbox, but I guess that's the best they could do, considering the ZF gearbox is quite bigger and it cannot be mounted on a transversely mounted engine. So yeah, it's decent, it's fast enough, but it does hesitate at times when you want it to be right there with you. Switch it into sport mode and it keeps the revs up, offering a sportier sensation. The car actually accelerates pretty fast from 0 to 60, doing it in 6.5 seconds, as you're about to see. And that's not all. Going flat out will allow the X2 xDrive25d to reach a top speed of 237 kilometers an hour, which is more than enough for anyone. Actually, the grunt of this car allows you to do easy overtakes at speed, triple digit speeds, and yeah, I couldn't complain about it. In terms of fuel consumption around town, you'll see around 9.5 liters per 100 kilometers of covered, and outside the city limits on the highways I saw an average of 6.5 to 7 liters per 100 kilometers, which is decent, but I did expect a little less. Now you do get a bi-turbo engine on this car, so yeah, that's bound to have a toll. If you decide to go for a front-wheel drive car or a petrol-powered car, front-wheel drive car, no matter if it's petrol-powered or diesel-powered, you'll get a completely new gearbox from BMW. It's a 7-speed DCT dual-clutch gearbox that's being rolled out on UKL platform cars like the Mini Range and the X1 and the X2. It's supposed to save some fuel compared to the old 6-speed automatic, but that remains to be seen. So, in terms of practicality compared to the X1, before I forget, the X2 does come with a bit less space, but that's no tragedy because the difference is actually very, very small. Furthermore, you can fold back the rear seats and get more room in the back. The tricky bit is that the lid for the boot is not retractable as we've grown used to, so you'll have to place it somewhere, and unfortunately the X2 doesn't offer any storage space for it, so you have to figure it out, either leave it at home, I don't know, do something with it. There is also generous boot space underneath the boot floor. You have a couple of storage bins that you can use. Overall, the X2 is a good car, and what I'm mostly impressed with is the fact that it feels different than compared to the X1. It does feel like it has its own character and that it will have its own followers. It's sporty, it's great to drive. Understeer doesn't show up until you push it up to, I don't know, maybe 9/10 out of 10, and then the rear axle will step in. So it does feel good to drive, and compared to its rivals, I think it's the best driving car in the segment. Speaking of rivals, you'll be looking at the Range Rover Evoque here, as BMW claims, and the Mercedes-Benz GLA. So these are the two main rivals this car has. And to be honest, the Range Rover might have the edge in terms of interior design and quality, but in terms of driving, this car is the best you can get out of the three. Now there's another issue with the X2, and that's the pricing. It starts, the model I'm testing, it starts at about 46,000 euros and goes up to close to 60,000 with all the options on this car, and that is a lot of money. And for that money you can get a 3 Series Touring, but that car won't be a crossover or SUV whatsoever. So if you need the higher ground clearance, it's not that big of a difference, but if you need a higher ground clearance, the X2 is a good alternative. Other than that, I probably go for the 320d Touring, because it's better to drive, and I really don't get this madness with SUVs and crossovers. But to be fair, 1 in every 3 cars BMW has sold over the course of 2017 has been an SUV. So BMW had to address the elephant in the room and is now offering SUVs in all shapes and sizes. This has been my review of the BMW X2 xDrive25d, and I hope you guys liked it. Don't forget to like, share and subscribe, and if you have any questions, just hit me up in the comment section below. I'll be more than glad to answer them all. And until next time, see you guys. Don't forget to subscribe.